Christ. The story is told about a man who was walking along the beach in Southern California. And as the sun was setting, he looked out over the ocean, and as the sun was sinking below the horizon, he was looking out there, and he wasn't really watching where he was going. He stubbed his toe, and he hurt. And when he looked down, he saw that there was something sticking up out of the sand. So he went down and dug it out, and lo and behold, it was one of those genie lamps. And he said, well, you know, I understand that if you rub one of these lamps that contain a genie, the genie pops out and grants you a wish. So he did just that. He rubbed it really hard. Poof, out came the genie. And the genie said, thank you for freeing me from that lamp. Now, to show my appreciation, I'm going to grant you a wish. Anything you want. And the man said, you know, I've always wanted to go to Hawaii. But I'm afraid to fly. And if I go on a boat, I get seasick. So I would like you to build me a road from Southern California straight to Hawaii. And the genie rubbed his chin for a little bit and said, that's pretty tough. How about something else? And the man thought for a moment and said, I would like to have the ability to understand women. And the genie said, now that road, you want one lane or two? Now, no doubt, men and women are different. And God created us to be that way. But that's not a bad thing. Now, scientists indeed tell us that there are a number of differences. And in fact, it all starts with the brain. Now, for example, men and women see things differently. Back in the days when our ancestors were living in caves, the men had to have a kind of a vision that would allow them to see a distance so they could see game. And they would be able to distinguish, especially animals that were camouflaged. But women, even today, have better peripheral vision than men do. And when you think about it, that was important back in the caveman days, in the cavewoman days. Because the woman was in the cave, she had to watch the kids, see what they were up to, watch the fire, be able to go out and look among the nuts and berries and plants to see which ones were poisonous, which ones weren't, and take a quick survey. And to also watch out for any predators that might attack the family. Well, when they came to family bed at night, it was very interesting because back in those days, the man would sleep closest to the entrance of the cave. And scientists tell us that many, many men do the same thing when they're sleeping with their wives. They sleep closest to the bedroom door. And it goes all the way back to the caveman days. Men and women indeed are different. I want to bring up a sensitive topic. Directions. Now, some women get upset because men are rather reluctant to ask directions. Well, researchers who study neuroscience in the brain tell us that we are less likely to ask for directions because we very rarely get lost in the first place. Now, wait a minute. We may get a little confused, but we're not lost. Now, 2,000 years, thousands and thousands of years, neuroscience has told us that men's brains are a little bit better at spatial issues and directional issues. And one of the things that men do that women just don't understand, if we come to an intersection and we're not sure which way to turn, have you noticed how we men will turn the radio down? As if to say, well, gee, if my hearing is better, my direction will be better. And women give you directions differently than men do. Women tend to use landmarks. Make a left at the McDonald's. Men will say, go east on Main Street. Well, neuroscience can certainly tell us a lot. But ladies, I got bad news for you. They still have not yet found out the reason why men don't put the toilet seat down. Well, you know, in restaurants, men and women are different. Men will go out to lunch, and the check comes for $32.50. All the men will throw in a $20 bill and not expect any change. But how often do you see it if women go out to lunch, the check comes, and somebody whips out the calculator? And they want their change back. Right? Yeah. Yeah. It's just a different way of looking at things. Now, also, it's amazing perspective on things. Men go to bed and wake up as good looking as when they went to bed. But women seem to believe that overnight something happens and it deteriorates. Well, we also know women have much better memories. Much better memories. I remember when I was a parish pastor and I would do premarital counseling, I would tell the men and the women, I would say, look, you have to agree to what I call the no garbage dumping rule. And they would say, what does that mean? I'd say, well, if you haven't discussed something and you haven't brought something up that is bothering you in 48 hours, then it's off the table. And they would look at me like I was crazy, and I said, men, pay attention to this. I'd say, what happened is, you and your spouse, you would have an argument. And they would say, well, last night you did this. And sort of a counter to that, you'd say, well, you know what, last week you did that. And then the wife would say, well, yeah, last month you did this. And we go back and forth. And then the wife would finally get the killer shot in. Well, the night we met, and men's head would simply swim and they'd go, huh? How do you remember this stuff? Right? I mean, you do, right? I mean, you do. And I said, men, 48 hours. Stick to that rule or you're going to get smoked. Well, this morning our lesson, we find that in our first lesson, God has created males and females in his part of creation. And they're meant to complement each other, to be helpmates to each other, to be partners in ministry and in life. And God doesn't want a battle of the sexes. He wants us to work together. And that's so critically important. Indeed, being created in the image of God is a wonderful thing. Both men and women are created in the image of God. And because of that, we need to have dignity and respect for the people around us, no matter what their sex may be. We need partners in life, helpmates, working together in a loving, caring relationship. Now, I need to tell you, don't get me wrong, that there are some times when those kind of relationships break down. God does not want anyone to be in an abusive relationship. It's not what God intended. Indeed, we need to teach each other with respect and dignity all the time. Now, it's interesting because we need to understand that marriage is a relationship between two imperfect people. You may not believe that, but again, it's imperfect people. Men get married, and they think that their wife will never change. But women get married and hope their husband will change. Story is told of a pastor who was asked to go to a Sunday school class and tell the children about what Jesus had to say about marriage. And the pastor said, do any of you kids know what Jesus said about marriage? And the little 9-year-old put his hand up and said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Well, this morning, some of the religious teachers came to Jesus. And they were once again trying to trap Jesus. They were once again trying to discredit him in front of his believers and his followers. And they decided to touch upon a very sensitive issue, this whole issue of divorce. Well, some rabbis were teaching that the only grounds for divorce was if a wife committed adultery or was unable to bear children. And you got to remember, if you committed adultery, you could be stoned to death, especially the woman. Other rabbis said, well, a man can really divorce his wife for any reason if she displeases him. And all he has to do is say to her 3 times, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, and issue her a certificate of divorce. Back in those days, women had no legal rights. 10 women could witness a crime, and they were told, you're not reliable witnesses. But if only one man witnessed the crime, he was considered a reliable witness. Women were considered to be property of the husband, and also their children were also considered to be property of the husband. And if a man divorced his wife, well, she would be thrust into a life of poverty. No one was there to take care of her family. She'd be reduced to begging, or maybe prostitution, or something like that. Anything to survive. It was a tremendous hardship. Indeed, women and children were considered property that could be traded in for a better and newer model anytime the husband decided he wanted to do that. And all the man had to do was say 3 times, I divorce you. And it was over. Indeed, they also had to issue that certificate of divorce because it was like saying, I give you my property, the release. Because if the woman didn't have that certificate of divorce and she married someone else, well, theoretically, she was still owned by the husband, the first husband. Indeed. Some of you may be thinking, men may be thinking more of the good old days, which you better not say. Now, in some parts of the world, this kind of thinking is still very, very prevalent. In the Middle East, for example, there are countries where women are not allowed out of the house without being accompanied by a male relative. They're not allowed to go to school. They're not allowed to drive cars. They're not allowed to have a profession. And if a woman is sexually assaulted, then she's the one who is punished by her family members. Now, some of you women may be thinking, well, I would never put up with that. But you see, the women in those parts of the country, the world, don't have an opportunity. They don't have a choice. Either you comply or you die. Now, we find that there are still couples who have that Old Testament kind of mentality. There's a story that's told about a woman. She went to the police station to report her missing husband. And the police officer said to her, well, give me a description. And she said, well, he's 6'4", has a very athletic build, has beautiful brown hair, lovely brown eyes. He never raises his voice, and he's so kind to the children. And her friends who went with her to the police station said, "What, are you kidding me? Your husband's 5'4", chubby, is bald, and he yells at the kids all the time." And a woman said, "Yeah, well, who wants that husband back?" Now, Jesus teaches us that all relationships are important. And the marriage relationship is a sacred bond that's been established by God in the beginning of creation. It's a bond that's intended to endure sickness and in health, good times and bad. Indeed, several years ago, there was a man whose wife became very ill. She had a very advanced case of Alzheimer's disease, and he had to put her in a home. And every day the man would come, and he would get there early in the morning, stay till late at night, and he would sit by her bedside, and he would read to her, he would talk to her, they'd share meals together. And one day, the nurse came in and said, "You know, you don't have to to do that anymore. You don't have to show up every day. Your wife's disease is so advanced, she doesn't know who you are. And the man said, she may not know who I am, but I know who she is. She's the woman to whom 55 years ago I promised to stand by her side for better or for worse. Think about that kind of commitment. That's the kind of commitment that God expects us to have in our marital relationships. And we need to remember that marriage really is a relationship between two imperfect people. And we need to recall the words of St. Paul in his letter to the Corinthians. You know, so often, this particular letter, the thing about love, it's used in marriage ceremonies, and it isn't long before the couple forgets all about those words. He says, love is patient and kind. Do we sometimes irritate each other? Yeah. We need to be patient and kind to each other. It's not envious. It's not boastful. It's not arrogant. It's not rude. Love is not selfish. Love is slow to anger. Love doesn't keep a record of wrongs. It's quick to forgive. It doesn't do evil. It seeks truth. And it always protects. It always trusts. And love always hopes. And love never, ever gives up. And we must not forget that when we look at that other person, that we are seeing somebody who is created in the image of God. That makes them precious. And of all creation, you and I are created in the image of God. And what a high honor that is. When we look at another person, we need to remember that this is a person that's so valuable in the eyes of God that God said, I'm going to send my son to die for their sins, that they might have eternal life. We're so precious in God's eyes. And the other people we have relationships with are as well. Everyone, man, woman, and children, should always be treated with dignity and respect. And we recall that Jesus' word, when you do this to one of the least of these, you do it to me. We also need to tell ourselves and ask ourselves, are my thoughts, are my words, and my actions things that will be pleasing to Jesus? And let's remember Jesus' command. He says, love one another as I have loved you. And that's the standard he expects us to keep. Amen.